with old config commands accidentally being unlocked through a special fix on the PC client, configuration and launch option commands were suddenly made available to be adjusted by players for the first time in over 3 years. These commands are mostly harmless, allowing you to remove smaller visual clutter such as muzzle flash or other things as a transparent HUD, removing the blurred background, and changing a command line to make footsteps magically work again, to completely removing Bangalore smoke or caustic gas. And some users, like Mooman, his professional player for Godsent, had decided to take it upon himself and use this to remove the model of the weapon to make the screen a little bit cleaner by removing a very large obstacle. A disastrous decision he would soon learn to regret. Once again, thank you so much Enlisted for sponsoring this video. Use my link in the description to play for free on PC, PlayStation, or Xbox. By using the link in the description, you'll receive 3 days of premium time and several orders for troops and weapons. On with the video. Mooman released this clip of the configuration, where he wiped squads without the gun visible on the screen, but with the iron sights still visible. This garnered a small amount of attention, but nothing really came out of it. He then followed up with another clip on Twitter, this one starting to gain a little bit more traction, with commenters wondering where the weapon model went. Some other commenters were less focused and more angry with the former pro, calling for bans against someone using this blatant, insane exploit. Lurty responded to this clip, asking whether this is actually okay to do or would be considered exploiting, something bannable, with Mooman responding, "Don't care, having fun." This resulted with Tyler Hitz quote tweeting the clip and adding that this is borderline cheating, with Mooman responding in that Twitter thread with a "let me relive season 0 to 1 because I don't care if I get banned." But with this, Mooman flew too close to the sun, as this caught the attention of Josh Medina, the senior producer at Respawn, who responded with a resounding bet. Not even 5 minutes later, Mooman was permanently banned from Apex Legends for using a configuration. Adding to the screenshot of his ban brought attention to the fact that many other players use more blatant scripts for movements such as neo-strafing, but he's the one who gets burned for using a command line to just remove a view model. He did add that he does believe he deserves a ban for what he did, but he doesn't agree that it should be permanent. So let's crack this one open and talk about it, because this is a very sensitive topic, one of which I have a lot of experience with, like in so many ways. So first off, do I agree with Mooman getting the boot for this? While I consider a permanent ban from the game kind of excessive, I definitely think that what he did wasn't the smartest thing. You see, changing a configuration file is super easy. It's as simple as knowing what the command is, and either going into the CFG files in your PC and changing that command, or manually typing it in your launch options in either Origin or Steam, and move some values around. And with some exceptions, as far as I know, this is undetectable. These values act as small toggles that the developers can change around and play with, and generally aren't intended to be played around with by the game's own community. Some other source games with these types of flags are a bit more lenient with them, such as Counter-Strike, where you can change lots of things, such as your graphic settings, your crosshair, and much more, with the more egregious advantages being locked behind another flag, this one being called SV_cheats. As I mentioned before, in the first year or so of the game, like Mooman called season 0 to 1, anyone could do this. The most common change was adjusting the muzzle flash, which by the way was completely blinding. But sadly, some users took it too far and ended up removing all particles, which in turn would completely remove Bangalore and caustic smoke. As a result, Respawn removed a lot of these commands. But after they had blacklisted these specific commands that were being abused, users found even more commands and ways to exploit the game, and eventually Respawn just decided to blacklist all what I think would be over 100, if not hundreds, of commands that could customize your game. Some were ripe for abuse, such as the particle effects. Some were useful for the average user through allowing you to lower your graphics to way lower settings than the in-game settings menu would allow you to, or playing for free stretched. And some were mostly useless or niche, such as a command that stops you from downclocking your game and losing frames when tabbing down. Please whitelist that, Respawn. I've been asking for this for 3 years. But due to the security risk of leaving these commands accessible, Respawn didn't care about the individual use cases and instead turned them from a blacklist to a whitelist basis, meaning they decide what specific commands are allowed, only allowing the most basic of commands such as FPS max, which allows you to set your max frame rate, and no vid, which stops you from playing the intro as soon as you start the game. Sorry, I went on a bit of a historical tangent, I do that a lot on this channel. Anyways, the point here is that Respawn couldn't track it and decided to blacklist these commands. These specific commands are important to know about because they are the same commands that another user figured out how to use for an advantage, and the ones that ultimately got mooman banned. Through the same config files and through Steam commands, users can enable movements that isn't otherwise possible, such as superglide scripts and macros through lowering your frame rate and making superglides easier to hit, automating jumping around and making yourself difficult to hit through neo-strafes, or just tap strafing with a controller. Many users understandably thought it was unfair to ban movement for what is considered such a small advantage, while somehow leaving these other abusers untouched. And again, there's not really any way for them to track who abuses this. And this will lead into my whole opinion on this situation. I think mooman made a huge mistake, a large oopsie if you will, by streaming his point of view without the view model, another oopsie by clipping it, and the hugest oopsie of them all by saying that he didn't care about getting banned. Obviously, he couldn't have known that someone at Respawn would see his reply, but this behavior puts you real close to the edge. He could have been assuming that due to how small of a benefit this was, it wouldn't be that big of a deal to Respawn. I mean, allegedly, according to Alliance's former coach, there are plenty of pros in the Pro League who use superglide scripts despite it being literally illegal through the ALGS rules, and plenty of content creators on controller who use tap strafing and other macros, and many would argue that these are of equal advantage, if not even more advantageous than making your weapon view model invisible. I mean, as I previously mentioned, these commands can not only remove muzzle flash, but they have the ability to negate things from rendering in, completely removing particles from smokes, and even has the ability to crash the entire server. So making your own weapon invisible in your line of view, something that's very commonly used in other source games such as Counter-Strike or Team Fortress, seems kind of tame in comparison. And as I said on stream, even though the crime isn't severe, and hell, in this case, it is in a bit of a gray area, it's still leaning into being illegal. If we would take a look at a real-life example, and obviously I'm not a lawyer, I'm a YouTuber, there are plenty of people who jaywalk, and they do it all the time. But they wouldn't jaywalk in front of a police officer. They also wouldn't film themselves jaywalking and then saying, "I don't care if I get arrested, I'm having fun." I mean, okay, I could think of a few who would do that and put it on TikTok, but odds are it would end more or less the same way that it did with mooman. I had also heard some whispers about certain other professional players using these same commands to improve the sound and audio and making footsteps work more often, leading into way less no audio moments. But as nothing of this is public and it's mostly hearsay, that's not something I can really report on with full certainty. But I wouldn't be surprised, as the data mining drama has shown that pros will abuse these advantages and shut up about them for as long as they possibly can. Either way, it's a huge L for the community as a whole that these commands are now available, and it does look a bit strange and selective to only ban a certain streamer for using the bare minimum of what these commands will allow you to do. But there's no way to track who abuses these commands, and mooman did kind of kick the hornet's nest himself. I know that Respawn said the ban was permanent, but hopefully that was just an automated message and we'll see him back shredding in the game in no time. If you guys want to hear more about the data mining drama, check out the video on the screen. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all tomorrow.